everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you guys a fall releases video. I've never done an anticipated releases video on my channel now that I'm thinking about it, but this was requested by one of my subscribers, so thank you so much for requesting this. This is a fantastic idea because there are a ton of books coming out in September and October, but there's also a few really excited releases for November and December. First, I would talk about some books that came out on September 1st that I already got my pre-orders for. I am filming this on September 16th, I think, so there are quite a few books that have already come out. But the first one is Majesty by Katherine McGee. This is book 2 in the American Royals. I think it's a duology, so I think this is the second and final book. But I read American Royals, which is the first book, a few months ago, I think back in May, and absolutely devoured it and loved it. So this is essentially a teen soap opera that is set in this United States where when our country was born, it wasn't created as a democracy, it was created as a monarchy, which is a very interesting idea. I will say when I first read that book, it definitely took me a long time to like get immersed in this weird United States. You know, to be quite honest, it's not that believable that the United States would ever be created as a monarchy when we were rebelling from a monarchy, you know? But I think once you kind of suspend your disbelief, you will really enjoy this series. And so yeah, this is book 2. I am so excited to get into this because American Royals was just, man, it was so dramatic, so juicy, and it was just a really fun time. Next up, we have Blood and Honey by Shelby Mahurin. This is book 2 in the Serpent and Dove, what is now a trilogy. I think originally it was going to be a duology and then it got expanded into a trilogy, which I'm very scared about because usually when series get expanded like that, the middle book suffers from that filler book syndrome. And unfortunately, I haven't heard the best reviews about this book. This is the second book of the series, so it is the middle book of the trilogy, and oh man, am I wary going into this book. I loved Serpent and Dove, which is the first book. I devoured that book. This is essentially a fantasy that takes place in a France-like country, and we have our main character Lou, who is a witch, and then Reed, who is a chasseur, which are essentially witch hunters, and Lou and Reed end up getting married towards the beginning of that first book. So it's definitely an enemies to lovers, marriage of convenience story. So yeah, I am scared going into it, but this cover is stunning. Isn't it stunning? Like, I hope that this book is good simply because of how beautiful this cover is. And then last but not least of the physical books that I have, this is A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is book 2 in her From Blood and Ash series. So this is an adult fantasy romance series, and I haven't read these books yet. I literally just got them in the mail a couple of days ago. I placed an order on Amazon recently, and I've heard phenomenal things about this series. I don't really know what it's about, but I've just heard everybody that I follow rave about these books, and so I am very excited to get into them. And A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, which is the sequel to the first book, this came out on September 1st as well. So we do have a few more September releases that I'm really excited about. I am just looking at my phone for this. So September 15th, which was yesterday, The Roommate by Rosie Denon, I think is her name, came out from Berkeley. And this is a romance that has been getting a ton of rave reviews from people that got the e-arc. I unfortunately did not get an e-arc off of NetGalley, but it's whatever. But I know that the basic premise is that this girl ends up moving in with this guy who's a porn star. And so that makes for a very interesting romance, and I'm very excited for it because the synopsis immediately drew me in. I think that's going to be a fun time. Then next, on September 22nd, I have a couple of releases that I'm really excited about. The first one is Tools of Engagement by Tessa Bailey. This is book 3. And I think this is the final book in Tessa Bailey's Hot and Hammered series. I've heard some really great things about this installment. We have seen the two characters featured in this book in the earlier books. I think specifically Love Her or Lose Her, which was the book that came out before this one. And yeah, I've heard that it's just an enemies to lovers romance, and it's these two characters that are fixing up a house, so that sounds like a really fun time. Then also on September 22nd, we have Well Played by Jen DeLuca, which is so exciting. So this is the sequel to Well Met, which came out last year. I absolutely adored that book. It's a Renaissance fair romance, and this one is also going to be centered around that same Renaissance fair. And I think this one centers around Stacy, who was Emily's best friend from the first book, and then Dex, who was another character that was featured a lot in the first book. So I'm definitely really looking forward to getting my own copy of this. If the idea of Renaissance fair romances appeals to you, definitely read Well Met and then read this when it comes out. Next, we've got October. We have quite a few books coming out on October 6th. The first one I want to mention is In a Holidays by Christina Lauren. I did get an e-arc of this off of NetGalley, and shame on me for not reading it yet, but it is a Christmas romance, so I kind of want to wait until after it comes out when I'm in the Christmas mood. But this one is essentially like Groundhog Day, the movie, meets Christmas. And so I think the main character like relives Christmas Day over and over again, and there's a romance involved. Sounds really adorable. I've heard really good things about this book so far. I know that Christina Lauren can be kind of hit or miss, especially recently. Some of their recent releases, like Twice in a Blue Moon, that was kind of a fail. I've heard not so great things about the Honey Don't list. So it seems like lately they've been kind of hit or miss, but I've heard really great things about this book, so I do have high hopes going into it. Another October 6th release is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. So this is essentially an adult fantasy novel about this girl, Addie LaRue, who makes a deal with the devil. I think she becomes immortal, but in exchange for that, no one in her life will ever remember her. Like, if she is not standing directly in front of them, they won't know who she is. So that's why it's the invisible life. And I think her life has been like this for hundreds of years where nobody remembers her, but then I think she meets this man who does remember her. And so that's kind of where the plot goes. I've heard that this book is just gut-wrenching and devastating and beautiful at the same time, so I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'm not sure yet if I'm gonna buy myself a physical copy or if I'm just going to check out like an ebook copy from the library, but nonetheless, I am very excited for this one. And then the last October 6th book we have is Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dodd. I think that's how her last name is pronounced. I don't know anything about this romance except that it's being published by Avon and it's about a plus-size main character, which of course we stand in this house. I've heard pretty good things about the arc so far from people who have gotten the arc. I unfortunately got denied for it, but I am looking forward to checking this one out when it comes out. And then last for October, we have Crazy Stupid Bromance by Alyssa K. Adams. This is coming out October 27th, and what I'm so pumped about with this book is that I actually got approved for the e-arc, and it wasn't through like the US NetGalley, it was actually through the UK NetGalley. So those of you guys that don't know, NetGalley has their own separate UK website where UK publishers put e-arcs up. And so Headline Eternal, I think that's the publisher's name, they are the publisher that is releasing Crazy Stupid Bromance, and so I requested it off of their site and I got approved. So I have an e-arc and I am contemplating reading it before release, but I also kind of want to wait until after it comes out because I have really been loving the audiobooks for this series. So yeah, I'm kind of debating on that, but I am so pumped about this book. I think this book is going to be about Noah, who was like the hacker guy in Undercover Bromance, but I'm not quite sure about that. But yeah, nonetheless, I am super duper pumped about this release. Now that I'm looking at my list of anticipated releases, it's probably the book that I am most excited about, but there is one other book that's kind of tied for that. So let's go into November. November 10th, we have Chasing Lucky by Jen Bennett, and I'm just excited because I really enjoy Jen Bennett's YA contemporary romances. I've read 2 of them at this point and have really enjoyed both of them. I have no clue what this book is about, but like I said, it's a Jen Bennett release, so I'm gonna read it. Also for early November, we have Instant Karma by Marissa Meyer. This is her first YA contemporary romance, but it does have a little bit of like a magical realism twist to it. I'm gonna read the synopsis off of Goodreads because I do not know what this is about. It says, a girl is suddenly gifted with the ability to cast instant karma on those around her, both good and bad. Chronic overachiever Prudence Daniels is always quick to cast judgment on the lazy, rude, and arrogant residents of her coastal town. Her dreams of karmic justice are fulfilled when, after a night out with her friends, she wakes up with the sudden ability to cast instant karma on those around her. There is one person on whom her powers consistently backfire. Quint Erickson, her slacker of a lab partner and all-around mortal enemy. So that sounds really fun and adorable. Of course, an enemies to lover situation, which we stan. Then going forward into November, we have November 17th, The Burning God by R.F. Kuang is going to be released. This is the third and final book in the Poppy War trilogy. I have not read any of the books of this series yet, but I did buy copies of the first two books, which is the Poppy War and the Dragon Republic, really recently because I just heard nothing but phenomenal things about this series. All I really know about the plot of this series is that it centers around this girl, Rin. She goes into this military academy, but of course there's fantastical elements as well. So just going off the synopsis, it's giving me an Ember in the Ashes vibes, but I mean, it probably is nothing like that series, but that's just what it's giving me. But I am very excited to start this series. It is an adult fantasy series, but I've heard that these are great books to read if you're trying to bridge the gap between reading YA fantasy and adult fantasy because it's kind of a mix of the two. And then another November release. This is the one that I think is tied with Crazy Stupid Bromance as far as my most anticipated release. And this is How the King of Elfame Learned to Hate Stories by Holly Black. So this is a novella that is going to be in Prince Cardin's POV, who was a major character in the Cruel Prince series, of course. And that is a series that I binged earlier this year. I will link that reading vlog up in the cards above because I'm actually really proud of how that vlog came out and I adored that trilogy. I'm so glad that I binged it. Oh, it was just so good. I love the fairy world that Holly Black has created in this series, and she just, she writes fae so well. And then I have two December releases. The first one is A Sky Beyond the Storm. This is coming out December 1st, and this is going to be the fourth and final book in the Ember in the Ashes series by Sabaa Tahir. So I have read the first two books so far of this series. I've really enjoyed both of them, but I can't say that I've been particularly blown away by them. I just feel like there's something missing for me at the moment. But I'm hoping that the third and fourth book will make me love these books because I do think that it's an interesting world and magic system and all of that. But for those of you guys that don't know the very basic synopsis of this series, we are following Laia and Elias. In this first book, Laia has a brother who has been working for this rebellion. Basically, there's this martial empire that rules over their kingdom, and it's very oppressive and terrible to the scholars, which is like this minority group that Laia is a part of. And so her brother, who's been working for this rebellion, he gets caught and arrested. So she ends up going undercover as a slave in the Martial Empire to try to get him out of prison. And then we have Elias, who is in this military academy as part of the Martial Empire. He's one of their top soldiers, but he definitely is second guessing his life choices and his life in general. So their paths end up crossing and very interesting things start happening. So I'm very excited for this fourth and final book to come out. Then the other December release that I want to talk about is Layla by Colleen Hoover. So this is coming out December 8th. So this is actually a paranormal romance from Colleen Hoover, which I don't think she's ever written one before. And I did get the e-arc of this off of NetGalley, which is always exciting. I'm just gonna read a little bit of the synopsis for you off of Goodreads because I literally have no clue what this is about. It says, when Leeds meets Layla, he's convinced he'll spend the rest of his life with her until an unexpected attack leaves Layla fighting for her life. After weeks in the hospital, Layla recovers physically, but the emotional and mental scarring has altered the woman Leeds fell in love with. In order to put their relationship back on track, Leeds whisks Layla away to the bed and breakfast where they first met. Once they arrive, Layla's behavior takes a bizarre turn. That sounds very interesting. I'm not going to read any more of the synopsis because I do not want to spoil it for myself or you guys. But with that being said, that's going to be it for this video. I'm sure there are more books being released, you know, in the next few months that I didn't talk about, but these are the books that I am personally the most excited for. I would love it if you guys would leave a comment down below if you want to discuss any of these books, and I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you in advance if you do. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!